difficult situation, but it's not an iceberg. And actually, it's much more like Shackleton trying to get that boat across the ocean to the other side, and you can do it. And why can you do it? Because you've only got to do three things as a Conservative leader. You've got to be able to get Brexit done. You've got to be able to, with all respect, Barry, defeat Jeremy Corbyn. And you've got to be able to reunify the country. And the big debate within this Tory leadership contest is, how do you do that? Some people are suggesting the way to do it is through a no-deal Brexit. And
when you say some people, 75% of Tory party members support it. I mean, are you in the wrong party?
I'm absolutely in the right party because, in my experience, and there'll be maybe even Tory party members in this audience, the fact that you're a member of a political party doesn't mean that you don't have an enormous amount of experience and wisdom. And my experience talking to associations up and down the country is that if you take it out of the black and white, Brexit, anti-Brexit, down to the details and out to the future, what kind of trade deal do you want for this country? Do we have the opportunity to sell tens of millions of electric cars into Europe? What do we want for farmers in Cumbria? Put it into the future, work back from that, and you find your way towards a deal. And the problem with no deal is that it sounds like an instant response, but it's not. It's a recipe for delay. In the end, this is a parliamentary democracy. We have to get it through Parliament.
You also have to get it through the EU. Michel Barnier said that this treaty, the treaty that Theresa May has negotiated, is the only option.
So this is why we need to be straight with people. Absolutely straight. The issue is not anymore pretending that you're going to get some different deal out of the EU by October. Nor is there any point pretending that we're going to be able to leave with a no deal in October. Both these pretenses lead to more delay. The resolution for this problem lies in Parliament. We're going to have to take it out of Parliament. We're going to create a citizens' assembly, just as they did in Ireland over abortion, which was a very polarised issue, black and white.
And they then had a referendum. Are you proposing another referendum after your citizens' assembly?
Absolutely not, because my experience, when you put people together in a room, now I may be wrong, maybe that you put citizens in a room and they listen for 3 weeks to details and arguments, and they come out as they did before. Half of them for no deal, half of them for a second referendum. But I don't believe that's what will happen. I believe if you talk about the future, the trade deals that all of you want, the future for your house, the future for your business, you're going to come back to a pragmatic, moderate deal which is going to allow us to unify the country.
And if the Citizens' Assembly comes back with no deal as a recommendation, would you accept that?
I do not believe that's going to happen. But in the end, but let me explain why. Because in the end, Parliament is sovereign. Parliament's got to make the decision. Nobody can get round Parliament. To return to my Shackleton analogy, that's the sea you've got to cross. That's the sea you've got to cross. Nobody can guarantee you can cross that sea, but that's the sea you've got to cross. And the question that needs to face all of you in choosing anybody to be Prime Minister, if you're doing that, is who is best able to take this through Parliament, not who's best able to produce fantasies of a renegotiation or fantasies of a no-deal delay.
Stephen, give us a psychologist's and an outsider's perspective on the whys and wherefores, or any sense, in fact, in electing a new Conservative leader.
Well, I'm reminded of H.L. Mencken's quote about democracy. The democracy is based on the principle that the people know what they want and they deserve to get it good and hard. Here, it seems to me that as much as we value direct participatory democracy, if the people vote for square circles, it's going to be a problem for the politicians to deliver it. And there seems to be a number of square circles here, taking the view from an outsider who has no direct skin in the game. But a no-deal Brexit seems mad. It just seems like a recipe for chaos. No deal that has been proposed is acceptable within the overall concept of Brexit. The idea of having a border between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland is a bad idea, but then of not having a border would again be inconsistent with what Brexit promised to deliver. So it does seem that as we start to think about the actual implications of implementing Brexit, it seems more and more like a square circle, and that the essence of intelligence, of learning, of progress is absorbing new information, learning from your mistakes, not repeating the same policy if new information that comes to light shows that it's unreasonable. Based on what we know now about how to implement Brexit, it seems to me perfectly reasonable to have a second decision, a second referendum.
Second referendum. OK.
Stephen has absolutely put his finger on it. The difficulty here, part of it does lie in Parliament. It lies amongst Brexiteers who have not come to a coherent view of what Brexit is, because Alex will say that it means one thing and it only means no deal, and other Brexiteers will say that it means Theresa May's deal because that's the only deal on the table. And I think the suggestion that we can have any confidence that there is a majority in the public for either of those options when people know the specifics of what Brexit is fantastical. That's why the only answer is to put it back to the people and say, this is what the details of Brexit looks like. Can you confirm you want to go ahead with this? Or, having seen those details, do you actually think it's a better deal with the EU?
Wait 1 second. Let's just talk a little bit more about what the details of that Brexit. I mean, I'll let you come in. I just want to take a question from Sally Blackett. Sally, where are you?
Should a new Prime Minister invite Nigel Farage to join his or her Brexit negotiating team?
Well, Rory, let me come to you then. In terms of a negotiation, pre or post a citizens' assembly?
We have to unify the country. That means that I am very happy. I've reached out to Nigel Farage. I've reached out to Len McCluskey. I'm happy to talk to anybody. And obviously, I'm happy to talk to the people around this table. But to do the negotiation, I've done a lot of negotiation in my life. I began as a British diplomat at the age of 22. You have to have one person doing the negotiation. The problem with this whole thing is this pretense that 650 MPs, each with different views, can negotiate a trade deal with Brussels. It simply doesn't work. And in response to Stephen Pinker's point, I have enormous respect for him as a neuroscientist, but there is a sense in which the definition of insanity is doing the same thing twice and expecting a different result. The second referendum will only tell us what we already know, which is the country is split almost straight down the middle by the issue of Brexit. Doesn't matter how people vote, we'll find out the same thing. The only way to unify the country is to take second referendum off the table, take no deal off the table, and find a compromise which will work for us, provide opportunities, and get our economy growing again so we can come together and get on with making a fairer society.
Woman here in the front.
If you did get elected, do you think you'd be able to last longer than Theresa, and how would you seal the divide that is now in our country?
Well, I think there are, thank you. I think there are...
Briefly, Rory.
Very briefly. I think the thing that I've picked up walking around recently, so I was in Woking today, I was in Warrington and Wigan yesterday, is that a lot of this is about fixing 1,000 small injustices in daily life. It's about listening to people and realising, for example, in Barking, that the issue there is that people simply don't feel safe in the streets. Somewhere else it may be hospital car parking charges. These are things we can fix and we need to get on with. Government needs to be much better at listening to individual problems and solving them. And if we act, we can win back people's trust.
OK, well, let's listen to our audience. I'm going to take a few points in one go, if that's right. The man there in the white shirt.
How can any party actually unify the country when each party is just ruled by people serving self-interest instead of party cohesion?
OK, woman here in the glasses.
Do you think realistically we've got time for another referendum? I mean, we've been given a deadline by the EU of the 31st of October, so how do we have time either for a second referendum or, more to the point, a general election?
OK. The man there in the blue shirt. Yes.
I would say this to Labour, especially after the Euro election results, you're bang on the drum and saying, oh, we want another election. I would say be careful what you wish for, because if you think that you had 14% in the Euro elections, if you think that's going to jump to 35% come a general election, you're deluded.
Doesn't this whole process just show you can't have an indirect democracy and a direct democracy functioning together? We've had we elect representatives for us inside our parliament, but yet we expect them to understand our commands from a direct democracy standpoint. It just doesn't work together at all.
Woman there in white t-shirt.
I
think one of the main issues is that when people voted Brexit, a lot of people didn't actually understand what they were voting for. No, they did. When they... Can you let me speak? You've got to let me speak and have some respect. Exactly.
Sorry, just make your point again.
I think that a lot of interviews that were done after Brexit, when people came out of voting and they said, you voted Brexit? Yes. Why did you vote Brexit? I don't know. If you could vote again, would you change your vote? And a lot of people said yes. And I think this needs to be taken into account and this needs to be taken into consideration when actually negotiating a Brexit deal.
OK. Well, listen, let's come back to Sally's question, which is, should a new Prime Minister invite Nigel Farage to join his or her Brexit negotiating team? Stephen?
Oh, dear. You don't know who Nigel Farage is.
My late colleague, Robert Nozick, said, I gave you a wise piece of advice many years ago, you don't have to have an opinion on everything.
OK. Alex, clearly the answer would be yes.
Well, you know,
For
the man's not radioactive. I've spent the best part of a decade with him and I'm fine. And actually, he is the sole voice, really, that represents the 17.4 million who voted to leave. He has now become the person who is proud to stand and say, we've got to deliver this result. Isn't complicating it.
How do you stand that claim up, Alex? Alex, now, how... That's quite a claim.
Well, when you look at the success of my party in the recent elections, and when you look at the collapse of the Labour and the Conservative vote, and people going either to Joe's party, the Lib Dems, or to us, people now identify primarily
more
with
people
being
voted on a petition to
Remainers.
revoke Article 50 than voted for the Brexit Party last week.
But... and yet we still beat you in the elections, so, you know, what can I say? If I could finish. You know, Nigel's actually got 2 decades' worth of experience inside that Parliament. I think Rory is actually being fairly sensible in saying, you know, why keep demonising somebody who, in many respects, is completely in tune with a big chunk of the electorate? You know,
I'll tell you why. I mean, we are in this mess because David Cameron, who started off his leadership by saying the Conservatives weren't going to keep banging on about Europe, capitulated to Nigel Farage and the UKIP tendency of his own party in calling the referendum in the first place. And this is a man who stood in front of that breaking point poster which stoked hate and division in our country, and he knew exactly what he was doing with that. And the morning after the referendum, he came on the television and he said, we won it without a single bullet being fired. A week earlier, an MP had been murdered. I have to say, that man is beyond pale. He should not be in our politics. We should not be inviting him into the negotiating team.
Can I come on this? I think the key thing here is the policy, not the personality. And I think where I would focus is what are people doing when they're voting for somebody talking about a no-deal Brexit? My view is that they are voting to get on with it. They want Brexit done. That doesn't mean that for 70% of those people, the question is the details of that deal. They want it done. And the problem with no-deal Brexit is it's going to lead to more delay, more uncertainty. You can't get it through Parliament. Even if by some miracle you could, you would then spend years trying to negotiate a future trade deal with Europe. The quickest way to get Brexit done, however uncomfortable this sounds, is going to be to work through Parliament, because we're a parliamentary democracy, and that's something that we need to respect and be proud of, and we need to unlock the problems in Parliament. And that's done by reaching across to them, but getting our own party, our Conservative Party, together again.
Sally, you're the one that asked this question. Could I just ask you, do you think Nigel Farage should be invited to the Brexit?
I do think he should, yes. As Alex has said, he has 20 years of inside knowledge of the workings of the EU. He now has a large new mandate, and he's got a total no-nonsense attitude. Yeah. And I don't think he's entirely all for no deal. What he says, I understand him to say, is that no deal should stay on the table. Yeah. Not be...
She's absolutely...
No, let's get back to ask the question. So if Jeremy Corbyn were doing the negotiations, would he invite Nigel Farage to be part of them?
No.
Would you invite me, though?
Let me explain why. It is governments who negotiate international treaties. And international treaties are perhaps the longest-lasting contracts that we enter into. Governments have to do that. Nigel Farage will have a say in what goes on because he's just been elected or re-elected to the European Parliament. He will have a say when it comes if there is a deal that